specifically on food waste within the dairy industry and how to get it into the hunger system, which I was like, yes, please, sustainability, hunger, dietetics, I'm full on board.
Do you ever have so many questions and no one to ask, so they're just wasting away on Google searches you'll forget about in an hour or so?
We had that same problem, and that's why we created the RD2Be podcast, a resource for dietetic and nutrition students looking for answers that their peers don't have.
We are students Macy and Emily and registered dietitian Carl Barnes. We engage in conversations and learn from RDs.
Join us weekly as we gain insight into the unique journeys of registered dietitians all over the country.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the RD2Be podcast. Before we get started today, we have a quick announcement. So we are going to be starting our spring iteration of the RD2Be Mentorship Program in a couple months here in February. So for those that are RD2Bs listening, go over to rd2be.com, RD2be.com, and I'll have a sign up for those interested in being a student participating in the mentorship program. For RDs who are listening right now, jump on over. We also have a sign up. We're looking for more RDs who want to be mentors for this program. So it's approximately a 5-week commitment, 5 meetings with your student. It's an incredible program. We had a ton of students and RDs participating last semester. Really looking forward to this next one and looking to step it up to the next level. But for the content today, I am very excited. We have a friend of mine who has been an RD. We just learned slightly longer than me, but we've been on the same track for basically the same time. So Joanne Rigali is here. She's a registered dietitian in sustainable agriculture with the U.S. Farmers and Ranchers in Action. I'm going to let her go in a little bit more into what she does, a little bit about her background, and then let Macy take it away.
Yeah, awesome. So thank you so much, Carl. So I do business development at U.S. Farmers and Ranchers in Action right now, where we're trying to help farmers become more sustainable. And that includes a variety of areas, including helping them figure out their metrics and also helping figure out the financial situation as well. So we really are there to support farmers and ranchers, really on the ground, people growing our food, right? And so my background in dietetics comes from when I was 16. I got grounded, and my mom made me attend a Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics Food and Culinary Professionals meeting. They had make your own food and everything. And at the time I was a vegetarian because I wanted to eat Cheetos and Oreos all day. And I was like, who are these amazing women? And they were in all sorts of areas of dietetics, and they were mostly business dietitians, and I was just hooked from there. And I was like, I have to know who these people are, and they were eating amazing food so that it doesn't hurt. And so from there, I went to undergrad at Colorado State University for my BS in dietetics, and I graduated in about 2.5 years, where I then went and worked at Walmart as a manager to try and implement nutrition programs about the difference between frozen, fresh, and canned food. That didn't work out too well for me, so I went to grad school instead, back in the Chicago suburbs at Dominican University, where I got my MBA RD. So they had a dual program doing both, and I always knew I wanted to be a dietitian in retail or some sort of business.
Thank you. Just to start off, you did an internship, correct?
Yeah. So so our program, how it worked, it was a 2-year MBA program, and during the day, during the day, Monday through Friday, each semester, you were at a location, whether it was like community, inpatient, outpatient, business, the other category that the academy has. I was lucky enough to work in a food bank too, and I'm really passionate about food security. So that was one of my internships that I just loved the most. Shout out to Northern Illinois Food Bank. And then so it was and then at nights we had classes for our business. What was interesting about that is we had 30 students at a time every year. So, you know, most internships are like 6 or so, totally depending, obviously, but ours was 30. So we had a lot of like support around us, a lot of people that, you know, had similar interests, especially because we were all getting our MBA rather than our MS. So, yeah.
Okay. So during your entire path, how exactly did you navigate? Like usually internships are more clinical based, community and food service, like traditional things. How did you navigate away from the traditional?
Well, I had a very good mentor. So my mom is also in the dietitian. I mean, she's also a dietitian. Um, and she's worked at Dairy Management Incorporated, which is National Dairy Council for most dietitians that they know, since I was 3. Happy to say I've never broken a bone because of the dairy industry. So, and she, you know, really helped me understand that. I mean, to be honest, I never knew clinical dietitians really. I only knew dietitians in business until I went to undergrad, which was actually kind of interesting because it was a culture shock a little bit for me going to undergrad where I was like, I want to be in business. And everyone's like, let's go work in hospitals, renal dietetics. And I'm like, ugh, what is that? So MNT was not the easiest class for me, I will say that. But it was definitely an interesting experience. And then I was lucky enough also because my mom is a dietitian. I went to FNCE every year. So it's a food and nutrition conference and expo that the Academy holds every year. Actually, where I met Carl. Um, and I was lucky enough to just like get to know just such amazing dietitians. I mean, like, and I was really involved in those DPGs, the dietetic practice groups too. So I was in dietitians in business communications. I mean, when I was a student, it was like $5 each. I think it still is. Some of them were even free if you were a student. So I just like joined them all, and figured out which ones like I was most interested in and which ones I liked the most. And it really tended to be more of those businessy types. So Macy, I think you might want to be a private practice dietitian. So you might be interested in the Nutrition Entrepreneurs Dietetic Practice Group. There are a lot of, I mean, so like really it's every single, you know, area that you even think you might go in. It's just as a student because it's less expensive than when you're a full dietitian. It was totally worth it to me. And so I went to Fancy and met all these awesome women and really got exposed to that business and more. Yeah.
Okay. So just to be more specific, where did you exactly find these groups? Like where
Yeah.
can
So
you just search around for that?
yeah. So if you go onto the Academy's website, so eatright.org or eatrightpro.org, I think it is. Every year, especially as a student, you have to be a member of the Academy. So whenever you sign up every year, they give you like options of like which dietetic practice group do you want to join? And I think there are like 12 or something. Um, and then there's also, oh, I don't know what the MIGs. I don't know what those stand for. Oh, this is
Okay.
embarrassing. But
Totally
there
fine.
was also like a 30 and under group that I joined. You know, there was also like women management or women something group that I joined. That one was like, okay, it didn't like interest me as much. Also, you find out if you go to Fancy every year, some of them hold amazing events. So really good food. I mean, when you're around food people, it doesn't hurt too. But it's a great place to network, and they have a lot of um, different options too, just to like and good resources. I mean, especially for when you're in school in undergrad, they have like a lot of good resources for you to use as well. So again, it's like eatrightpro.org and just look up their dietetic practice groups. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So throughout your career, have you experienced any positions that you didn't like that didn't really fit? And how did you stray away from that?
Yeah, so you learn a lot when you're in your internship. I mean, I knew right
Yeah.
away that I did not want to do anything in a hospital.
Yeah.
Um, Like I admire those dietitians so much because I could just never do it. And I really wanted to be more of a corporate dietitian, being able to influence food and ag companies, the people that influence on the marketing side. That's really what I thought I wanted to do originally. And so that's kind of the path I took. My first job, which I guess was like an internship that got extended, was at Dairy Management Incorporated, working on their sustainable food and agriculture or sustainable nutrition program. And that was specifically on food waste within the dairy industry and how to get it into the hunger system, which I was like, yes, please, sustainability, hunger, dietetics, I'm full on board. Um, so I did that, and that was just really awesome. And then I was like, I want to do more things like this, but then, that like internship contractual period kind of ended, and then it was just a free for all. And I ended up, oh, this is not going to be good to say out loud, but I ended up taking RD off of the top of my resume. On the top of your resume, you have like Joanne Rigali, RD, MBA, super cool, fabulous person. But people couldn't make the connection of why a dietitian is important in like a business role. They just like
Mm.
couldn't connect it because they were just thinking of dietitians as like somebody who tells you how to eat, the like people that stereotype dietitians, which is totally not what we do. But so I ended up taking it off my resume, and I ended up getting a position at a dairy company based out of New Zealand that had a headquarters in Chicago, and I did marketing for their retail brand. So that was like a full 180 from like doing stuff that was dietitian related to just like flipping it on its head and almost going to the people that dietitians kind of yell at for saying you're creating this consumer confusion and like, why do you keep having to put labels on my food? Really was just to I just wanted to infiltrate them and have them stop doing that as a dietitian, because we have these ethics that we uphold. And that's why I'm so proud to be a dietitian, is because we have these ethics and values that we have to live up to, right? I'm not going to say that grass-fed butter is better when it's, negligible, so it's stuff like that that I was trying to really influence. And I think I definitely had a pull there. In certain ways. In other ways, it's just the beast of working in corporate America, I'd say, that I didn't have as much influence as I'd like to have. So then I worked on their food service side, trying to make chefs incorporate some like healthier dairy or not alternatives, but healthier dairy choices. And then I moved to their ingredients end, which was really like, like Cliff bars and all those sports nutrition bars is really the area that we worked in there to provide, whey ingredients and et cetera. And that was just like, just as a dietitian, you don't ever learn that world. And it is just so relevant to dietetics. It just shocks me. So I encourage all dietitians to go whichever path they want, but this is definitely one that was non-traditional and that I'm very happy I pursued. Ended up really not liking it. I kind of felt like, you know, in corporate America, you're beholden to, your budget and your revenue. It's just the reality of the game. And if it doesn't benefit the triple bottom line, work out for everyone, it's kind of hard to sell, even if it's the right thing to do. So I left there, and then I joined the current company that I'm at now, which is US Farmers and Ranchers in Action, actually with one of my prior managers at the National Dairy Council. And so it's all about who you know, never burn any bridges, moral of the story. And it's really just about figuring out what you just like are super passionate about and just like totally can't get enough of and love. So yeah.
Mhm. So how exactly did you move from one thing to the next at your position? You said you moved to food service. Was that in the same industry, like in the same
Company,
company,
yeah.
right? So how did you
Yeah.
do that?
Ooh. It was opportunity, I'd say. Like, and it was some of it was a little bit forced. It was like this is what you're doing now. And I was like, okay, I'll do that now. And then one of them was, there's this position open and someone asked me to apply for it. I would say that the mentorship program that Carl just mentioned, I just can't emphasize how valuable those are. Just in terms of like having somebody that's on your side, that's like a third party, that you might not, because sometimes it's just like hard to talk with what you're experiencing with somebody that you know super well. I don't really know how to say that any other way, but I mean, mentorship is just how I've gotten anywhere in my career and even into my internship. I mean, you know, dietitians have a certain amount of hours we have to hit, but there's like a little bit of flex time in there if you actually look at the uh, CDR requirements. You have like, I think it's like 120 hours where you can kind of flex. And if you see an area that you would like to do more, I think there's like a food bank internship practicum. I can't remember what they're called. Oh my gosh, I'm so old now anymore. But and there's a PR one, which is just really interesting. And just like even get out of your comfort zone, even if you know you want to be a renal dietitian, just like pushing for doing something that's like way different can really just, you could just do a total 180. I know one of my friends did like a PR and she was doing a little bit of HR and she ended up not even becoming a dietitian in grad school and just doing HR totally. It's like making sure you're taking advantage of these opportunities and just like connecting with everyone that you possibly can. And one of the biggest things that I learned on my internship, at least, is all of the people that you're ever going to be in an internship with or you're ever in undergrad school with, make sure that you like keep their numbers or keep their emails because you never know. Like even for me as somebody who's like a little bit separated now from dietetics, how many times I want to reach out to somebody that, I see on LinkedIn or something, and just like, hey, we graduated together. I know I didn't talk ever, but do you think you can help me and provide opportunities? And that's really what the dietetic world is, which is so weird because it's so different than your undergrad. Undergrad's kind of like competitive a little bit. And then when you're a dietitian, it's just like mostly everybody's together, mostly, except for Carl. Carl's just off on his own doing whatever he wants. No, I'm just kidding.
Just to rewind a little bit, you mentioned
Yeah.
you didn't enjoy clinical as much. So
Mhm.
for students who are kind of in the same boat as you, how would you, how did you survive clinical?
Yeah, it was, I mean, like it was a struggle for me. It did not come easy. That MNT science stuff did not come easy to me. It was the like community and the food service that I was like, oh, bum, I can do this in a snap. Um, Really, it was leaning on my other dietitians or like RDs2Be. I mean, seriously, that's the only way I got through any of that. Was I was lucky enough to like not be alone in any of my internships because we were such a large cohort. And like we at least had like 4 people in each. And it was totally all of those people who was like, what am I doing? I have, it was really reaching out and depending on them. I'd say a lot. And continuing to think that or to know that it's temporary, like it seems like a lot, especially for those who are just like cranking out your hours and doing it in a year. Like I was lucky enough to like spread it out and do it in 2 years, um, but we still had clinical or inpatient at least for an entire semester, um, which actually might have dragged it out longer, but yeah, it was just totally relying on the other RDs2Be, especially the ones who wanted to do that area. They kind of just like
Yeah.
got it better, you know? So I don't know. Do you like clinical inpatient at all?
Personally, I'm not too interested in it.
Uh,
Just because I don't really want to work at a hospital. I kind of rather work with people like a bigger population so that I can prevent major issues so that people don't have to go to the hospital. That's like my main goal, I think. And like
that's
people who
awesome.
don't like doctors, I guess, because it's expensive and I don't know.
Yeah.
But did
Yeah,
you actually learn
preventative.
any?
That's good.
Yeah, preventive. Yeah. Did you learn anything valuable from clinical at all? Like you have any advice for people to
How to
get
be a
out of food?
dietitian. I mean, that's like our OG dietitians, that's where we kind of came up other than like the home ec crew, but to solidify ourselves as an authentic position, I think clinical really helped define that. Um, so I really kind of learned that, and I mean, like tube feeds, I mean, that's so cool. I mean,
Yeah.
like I wasn't all into it, but just being able to like have that knowledge and how much protein per kilogram is a person supposed to get. I mean, I love all of that. Um, do I do it well? No. But I mean, it's just so important to learn. And if you want to ever pass your RD test, it's very crucial.
Okay, noted.
Yes.
So just to go more into your current job right now, what does a good day look like for you, and what does a bad day look like for you?
Yeah. So since I'm in business development, it's really trying to get companies mostly on the like end of the food value chain. So like those consumer product good companies, retailers, um, you know, food companies, like just quick service restaurants. So whether it's McDonald's, Culver's, etc. Also to come on board with us to help farmers. We really right now are trying to, I mean, right now we're in a time where climate issues matter. And saying the word climate change to farmers is sometimes a trigger, just from the nature of who they are. And a lot of times agriculture gets demonized for being a huge part of the problem. We're trying to kind of flip that on its head and say agriculture is the solution to climate change. I mean, in so many ways, we can do so much carbon drawdown along with forestry. I mean, there's so many of those solution powers to it. And then um, really connecting farmers and ranchers to those companies. So there are a lot of consumers out there who ask dietitians like, hey, what do I eat? Do I need to eat organic? Do I not need to eat organic? And farmers are kind of asking the same question, but just like a little bit different, just like, do I need to grow this to survive? And, you know, but as I learned, especially working in food security, it's like all food systems matter. Organic matters, conventional matters. It's just making sure that you're doing the best that you can for your land. And when it gets down to it, if you're ever talking to a farmer, it's just like talking to a dietitian. It's like, really, we just want to help people. Um, and we want to feed people right. And that's really why I love talking to farmers so much. And I think it's a miss that more of the dietetic curriculum doesn't include more agriculture education. I mean, have you gotten any?
No.
Right, exactly.
I
It's like we
mean, not
skip
that I'm
over the
aware of.
part. It's like we're telling people how to eat and we're skipping over the part of like, how did this food get it to our table in the first place? Especially because
Yeah,
consumers are asking us, a
yeah,
lot of the time. So, and then doctors, they get, 16 hours of nutrition education and they'll tell them whatever the latest, science article they read. And is that actually legitimate, within the
yeah.
nutrition industry? So I think that like fundamentally farmers and dietetics, that's where I get my similarities. And that's really where I get my passion for what I'm doing right now, even though it's not specifically related to nutrition. Um, but I think even within the USDA and the like my plate and the food pyramid going way back, is there's conversations of like, should sustainable nutrition be involved? And what I'm learning now, working with farmers and ranchers, is that we just don't know enough yet to be able to say a meatless diet is better for the environment or not, you know? So it's just like a really exciting time to be in sustainable agriculture, and especially in the lens of a dietitian, it's really exciting. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do.
Would you say you learned more from schooling or more from experience? Because you seem very educated on what you do and like how to interact with everybody. So I don't know how much that comes from schooling.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Okay.
I mean, I was like head down, just go for it, trying to do dietetic curriculum of 4
Yeah.
years into 2.5 was
Hmm.
a lot. So I learned none of my social skills there. Um, For sure. I think it helped a lot having a cohort of 30 in my dietetic program, um, just because of the breadth and depth of the experiences in that room. And, the first day we got there, it was like, why are you here? And a lot of it was because I got an internship, not because I want to get my MBA with my RD. I
Yeah.
think there were 3 people out of 30 in the room that said, I want to get my MBA, rather than most other people were like, I want my RD. you know, um,
Mhm.
so I definitely learned a lot from that. But I mean, mostly it was getting experience. Being a manager of a Walmart at 20 years old is just the biggest culture shock of your entire life. So I will say that that also really helped develop professionally. But I mean, the second you get into, like, I recommend for all undergrads to shadow as many dietitians as they possibly can. And I know it's hard in the world of COVID right now, but um, I mean, even just like, hey, can I jump on a bunch of Zoom calls with you? Just like be in the background, muted, no camera, just to listen to what you do. I mean, it's like not a hard lift for a lot of dietitians. And because so many dietitians want to look out for other dietitians or dietitians in training, RDs to be. I don't know what the plural of that is. um, but
I do to these.
yeah, sure. um, but I mean, just shadowing as many people as you can. Like whenever a dietitian came into the class to talk to us in undergrad, I was always like, hey, do you have like a day I can shadow you or just like 4 hours? Just to like get more exposure because I mean, you learn everything that you can in books and stuff and you like might know a few dietitians, but I mean, the range in which dietitians operate is just huge. And that's why our industry is so amazing because you can literally do whatever you want in our profession. I mean, it's really cool. That's my plug for dietetics. Be a dietitian. Doesn't matter what you want to do,
Okay.
be a dietitian.
So I guess, um, what resources if you use any, do you use any resources to stay up to date on nutrition information at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So those dietetic practice groups, like I said, I think the journal helps. I mean, to be honest, I'm not reading the full journal of the Academy of Nutrition Dietetics, but I definitely read the glossary to see if anything really piques my interest. Um, Also, I'd say, when there's something specific that I want to like know or learn, I'll just reach out to people and be like, hey, do you know anyone? And then also, it's so expensive. I mean, not in school because you have like all the databases and everything, but it's so expensive to buy a lot of this research. And if you email any of the authors of the research, usually they'll just send it to you.
Hmm.
Which I will say, pro tip, that's
Plug.
awesome. Yeah. um, and they're always so nice too, and like really want to talk about it because that's like what they're passionate about, what they just did for the last like 8 years or whatever it was. Um,
Hmm.
and it's really cool. I mean, our community is just reach out when you see something and the worst thing that can happen is they're just not going to respond. I
There
mean,
you go.
really. Yeah. So I use those resources. And then when I was a little bit earlier, I used Andy, which I have no idea what Academy of Nutrition Diet, ANDII, which is a part of the Academy resources as well, I think. A little bit. And then I don't know, I used to use a lot of stuff, but now being separated, it's so different. Um, I use a lot of the like find a dietitian, and I'll just type in like farmer if I'm trying to find a dietitian farmer because they usually have really cool
Oh wow.
perspectives. Um, and that's what I do. So,
Yeah. Is that like a
um,
website? Find a dietitian.
no, it's on eatright.com, and you can
Oh.
go to like
Oh,
there's
just
like a
on their
certain
website.
section. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What about you? Do you use any of the Academy's resources like through school?
I I just joined the academy this past year, so I haven't used too much. I looked through the groups a little bit just to see where I might fall into, but I haven't. I just see their emails sometimes.
Yeah. I mean,
But did you use it during school at all, or what
oh,
resource did you use in
oh
school
yeah.
a
Oh,
lot?
I don't even know what the database was called anymore. God, that's so long ago. I'm useless. But I mean, you can go through the Academy archive and see which articles and just like type a keyword. It's basically like Google, but awesome and for nutrition articles. Um, so you can go through the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics journal. I think it's like jand.org or something. Journal of Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And they have a database of all of their articles, which is super helpful in terms of like doing any research or anything. There's also a lot of like when you're studying for your RD exam, which is a ways
Mhm.
away, but um, there's also a lot of dietitians who just graduated that you can just like reach out to as well. You know, whether it was just like the internship before you, because especially if they passed it already. I mean, I had mountains of all of this dietitian study materials and everything, and they're expensive. I mean, worth it, but expensive. That we just shared around with everyone. You know, it was like, I'm taking my test in June, I'm taking mine in July, I'm taking mine in August. Could I have it for that, you know, after you take yours? That was really helpful. Again, it's just like, I'd say dietitians, the way to succeed is just like use your people. And if you don't have people, any person you ever meet, just keep them in your pocketbook. That's it. You know, your Rolodex or I don't know, your contacts folder. You know, yeah,
Oh,
it's really
besides
helpful.
networking with people, I know your school time was kind of short, but did you do anything like inside or outside that helped you with getting into an internship or standing out that you would
Um,
recommend to students?
this is going to be controversial, but I will say a little
Okay.
work experience
Yeah.
is really helpful, just especially now that you know, I think we're moving to having to get masters. I don't know when that was implemented, but you know, it's just it's just like a different level. It's not like just put your head down and study. It's just like a I don't even know how to explain it. It's just like a higher level that you need to be able to operate at. And I think you can get a lot more out of it if you just like take a year. That's it. You just take a year, especially if you, and never be discouraged if you don't get into an internship right away. I mean, I knew I wasn't because of my GPA, so I didn't even apply for any. And I
Really?
knew I wanted, yeah, no, I did. Oh, diecast? Oh, that was a nightmare. Like we had to for my like graduation program, and I just like applied to like, I don't know, the most elite ones, knowing I wasn't gonna get in. um, but I mean, I always knew that I wanted to do my dietitian or my internship with my master's program. Um, again, I'm a very non-traditional person to be asking this,
Yeah.
but
I mean, honestly, it's pretty relieving
yeah,
because normally I see a lot of the same people, like smart as hell, like, you know, studying
yeah,
super hard, getting high GPAs, like doing everything the most, like so many internships before your actual internship. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
how do we actually, you know, if we're not good enough right now or seemingly not good enough?
yeah. And I mean, I even reached out to the school that I wanted to go to when I was still working at Walmart, like 6 months before I was even going to apply, just be like, what do I need to do to get into this program? Like, I really want to get in this program. What do I need to do? And they're like, okay, you need to retake an MNT class because, again, it was not my strong suit. um, I, what else did I have to do? I had to take my GRE twice because I didn't get a good enough score. And I mean, like I get the biggest test anxiety that you could ever know of any person ever. Like I feel like I'm going to pass out every time I take a test. Doesn't really work well for school, but I knew I could like succeed in life just because I like didn't do good.
Yeah.
Um, it's just really hard, especially in your undergrad, because everybody's like, you have to get A's and you have to have a 4.0 and you have to have like 4 people that you already shadowed and you have to do all of this extra stuff and make sure you're involved in all of these groups. I'm like, I'm also in college. I'm also trying to like have a job to pay for it. It's just like, I mean, and also you're in college and it's awesome. So, I mean, it's just like hard. Um, and so I always knew I wasn't like that good at school. So, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, killed it in grad school. But again, I think it was like the year break that I had, that really, just gave me a little bit of life experience in order for me to understand why I was why I wanted to learn what I was learning, which is like totally different than undergrad, which is just like get through it, do really super well, or your dietetics isn't for you. And I think that, it just sucks for the dietetic community, and I mean, sometimes it's super discouraging. It's like, if I don't have a 4.0, I can't be a dietitian. False. Right here, example number 1.
Oh my gosh, very relieving. You said work experience helps, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
what type of work experience would you recommend to students, like
I mean,
specifically?
within the realm of what you want to do. So whether it's just like being in food service at a hospital, just like for a little bit, or just like, I mean, working at Walmart for me was beyond loads helpful, but again, mostly from like my business experience than anything else. Just like if you want to work in a hospital, or if you want to work in food service, or just like the area that you like kind of think you want to be in, just like getting a little bit experience in that will really give you a leg up. And you never know, you might end up just being like, this is the worst thing that I've ever done in my entire life. This is not what I want to do. That dietetic person seems super rad, so I'm going to go that way. Um, and I think that is just, even if it's just like your summer before, like if you get accepted and you just have a summer before, just like getting even those 3 months of experience is just like wildly helpful. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, so
Okay.
that's my advice.
So for school, did you develop any strengths? Like, did you have anything that you
Not,
got out of school specifically?
yeah. Again, the relationships I'd say is
Okay.
huge. Um, but then also it's just, I mean, I've saved a lot of my books, like the Krauss book that you have, like all my M&T books that I have, just because even though I don't do anything specifically dietetic related, um, like your traditional, dietitian related, I
Yeah.
still get a lot of questions. Whenever I tell anyone that I'm a dietitian, they're like, "Oh, what food should I eat?"
Oh
Oh,
gosh.
wonderful. Um, and so those books sometimes really help too. I would say that probably the biggest skill that helps me in my professional career now is that like nutrition translation, right? That we have. I mean, you just naturally as a dietitian, you have to learn. You're like, have all of these huge research papers that you have to read and like analyze and then give them to a consumer who like would never be able to even comprehend like half of those words, you know?
Mhm.
So that translation, I think this is one of the like biggest strengths of dietitians is that we're able to take this super complicated material and hone it down into a easy packageable material for whoever our audience is, very audience specific. That is the most valuable thing just in life almost that I learned out of dietetics is because whenever I approach any conversation, whether it's confrontational or whether, we're totally on the same page, it's just really helpful to say, okay, who's my audience? Where are they coming from? And what do I know about it? And how can I communicate that information to who I'm talking to? And I know it's like a kind of a far reach going from like scientific journals to a consumer, and then from like life experience to your uncle at Thanksgiving. But it is that, yeah, that for sure in school definitely was the most valuable.
What weaknesses did you have to overcome?
Oh, just sucking at MNT. Just like,
Okay.
yeah, that one. Oh, so rough. Um, what else? There was another class. It was like physiology or something. Also bombed that one. Um, but also it was, I think it really also was like the weakness I ever had to overcome was like meeting people because I was like on a track. I'm like, I'm graduating in 2.5 years and nobody's getting in my way. And even if I get a 2.0, I don't care, which I didn't, but I get a little higher than that. But I just like, I was graduating and I didn't care, hell or high water, I was graduating in that time. So, I mean, yeah, it was, I really had to overcome that people one, especially because again, the like dietetic undergrad community, it's very competitive. It's like we're all going for the same internships, but like there are so many more paths than just, and especially now because the academy kind of identified it as an issue. They have like ISPs, which again, no idea what that stands for, but I think that was like individual supervised practice. So you kind of find your own internship. Um, that really, I mean, there's a lot more options now, but I mean, the undergrad mentality is just competitive, and you're going to need every single one of those potentially future dietitians throughout your career forever. So, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I've like felt unmotivated, to become an RD just because I felt like I didn't fit in. So it's pretty relieving to like hear that you don't have to be super competitive, you don't have to be super type A, you don't have to, study hard, work like do chemistry really well. That's pretty relieving and I'm sure to a lot of people too. Um, but since it is super competitive, do you have any tips to like improve your application for students that you've seen?
Yeah. I mean, it is, I mean, I'm sorry I keep coming back to this,
It's
but
hard.
it's totally meeting people. I mean,
Okay,
if
yeah.
you have an internship that you know you want to go towards, reach
Yeah.
out to the internship director.
Mm,
Like 2 years, I mean, like right now, you're a junior, right? Like right now, just
yeah.
be like, oh, I really want to go to this one in Seattle or at Bastyr. I mean, one of my friends did. So she just reached out to him early, said, hey, what should I do? How can I like get more involved early so that I can like, and didn't get in the first time. Like, did diecast, but she's just like so stuck on that school. She just couldn't get around it. So then she just applied the next year, or I think it was the next semester, and then she got in. And so,
Mm,
I mean, it's really don't get discouraged and take those opportunities if you don't get in to like learn more skills because again, that life experience too, I mean, the just like working is huge, I think, on an application. Um, just because, I mean, it's just it's just a different level. I don't really know how to explain it.
So I work at a restaurant. Do you think
Yeah,
do you
for
think
sure.
that,
Yeah. Ask your the food manager.
yeah, that's what I was gonna use
Um,
for my references at
yeah,
least.
for sure. No, I mean, I'd ask him too. I'd say like, hey, can I like do a cost analysis of your meals, or can I
Mm,
do, which is also really helpful to learn just for business because you can see how much you paid for all that food that was on the table versus like
yeah.
the, you know, 600% markup that he's charging people, which is just like interesting from a business perspective. At least again, I'm very business oriented, so that's really interesting to me. But
Yeah.
doing that, doing like, hey, can I like do any like nutrition things like out of when I'm working? I mean, that's I mean, first of all, it's going to make you look good because you're taking the initiative. It's also going to get you a lot more experience and, try and figure out like how can I use my potential future dietetics in this job that I have right now. And you literally can do it in any job, basically, that has anything to do with food or agriculture.
Mm,
So definitely recommend that. Um, and I think don't sell yourself short. Like I would, if you're a server for however long, take that as like I had opportunity to see, what it's like to run a small business or a restaurant and, all the costs associated and all the issues and, just try and learn as much as you can there. Like I was a florist Like literally, I still do this sometimes on the side. It's my side hustle.
I
Um,
love
and
that.
yeah, and I still was able to like connect that to, yeah, random, right? Like I was like, it was a small business. I was able to like run all of these things. I managed people, never sell yourself short for any job experience that you have, like literally anything, even if it's a data entry job, that is applicable, because if you're ever going to be a dietitian in a hospital, you will be charting a lot. So it's like, you know, try and figure out every single opportunity. And this is where mentors come in. It's like, how can I use this experience that I had to like show that it was applicable to what I'm trying to do? That's, yeah,
Nice. That was
mentors are
super
huge for that.
helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, super helpful because, yeah, a lot of the time I feel like me and probably other people don't always think about taking that specific initiative. It just doesn't come to the mind because we're focused on a bunch of other things, but we can really just branch out wherever we want to. Super helpful. So, speaking of networking, do you think that LinkedIn has been useful in your career?
Oh my God. Like, oh, yes.
Super essential.
100%, 100,000 billion%. Um, if you, I mean, my LinkedIn is a little outdated, but I will tell you the reason why I use it right now the most is because when I'm trying to find someone, or just to reach out to them if I don't have their email address, or if I'm trying to find somebody that I used to know, who I don't have their like updated contact info anymore, I can always just send a message on LinkedIn and be like, hey, really want to touch base? And I'm terrible at communication, like even with like my friends and family. Like I don't text back, I never call back. Like I answer an email maybe a year and a half later. Um, like I am terrible. But so me networking, trying to keep up with all of my mentors, like, do I have to email them once a week or once a month? Or I don't want to be naggy, so like once a quarter, or how do I do this? And, can I reach out to a mentor that I used to have like 10 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
And the way I do that is through LinkedIn. And I just reach out and be like, hey, like, really would love to touch base. And, networking is all about, it kind of sometimes feels like you're using them, but like really like, as long as you both can do that for each other, then I've had people that have been my mentors that have reached out like, hey, do you know of any open job positions? Or they'll see an open job position in a company that I'm working at now and like, hey, can you give me a reference? Like, I mean, that's what it's all about. It's about the people.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
are you selective at all with who you connect with on LinkedIn? Or are you just
Yes. I get a
anybody
lot
and
of like
everybody?
connections from people that I've not even ever associated with that are like in Europe. And I'm like, unless I met them, I'm like, this doesn't feel worth it. But then other than that, like any RD I ever see that connects with me on LinkedIn, I'm like, yes, especially if they write me a little note like, hey, just want to connect as a fellow RD. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, let's do it.
Okay.
um, yeah.
So, writing a note is a tip. What other tips do you have in either getting more connections or developing profiles that will optimize like opportunities?
Yeah. So talking to like a mentor, like the RD2Be program with Carl, will be really helpful in order to help you shape what you want to say in there.
Mm,
And I would say that not being scared of reaching out to someone you've never met before. Like, do not be scared of that. Really, it like makes you seem like courageous and brave and like, oh, this person like wants to talk to me, as long as it's not like a sales pitch. But, especially
yeah.
if it's just for like personal, professional development, people are
Mm,
usually like absolutely okay with that. Um, I mean, it's hard to craft those, um, especially because you kind of have to use different language. Like when I was applying to
yeah.
dietetic jobs, I had to totally change my resume and my LinkedIn profile even to say stuff more dietitian-y. And then when I'm applying for business ones, it's more like all those like business buzzwords like innovation and, like
Yeah.
whatever.
Hmm.
um, and so that I mean, that's rough. I mean, so I ended up just have one full resume that's probably about like 24 pages that has, I mean, this is like the most dietitian thing that I probably do in my entire life because this is the only like type A thing I do, but it's like I have every job that I have, and then I have like a job description that I kind of want to go for. So whether it's like business or like dietitian or like, I don't know, innovation or sustainability, then I'll have like bullets under each of those. And depending on
Mhm.
like what job I'm going for, that's what I'll put on my LinkedIn. But then I have this just like, it's like a Google Doc basically, and I update it whenever I can. And then I also send my resume all the time to some of my close friends, and I'm just like, can you tell me what sucks on this or what's awesome on this so that I can just like, freshen it up. It usually happens when I'm having a bad day at work, which doesn't actually happen that often for me, but that's when I'm like, oh, maybe I should start thinking about moving, especially as like myself, a millennial, and I think you're probably like Gen Z. Um, but it's just like I don't like to do the same thing every day, ever,
Mhm.
and that's why I think I thrive in my job right now is because no day am I ever talking to the same person, doing the same thing, sending the same stuff. It's always different, it always keeps me on my toes. So, um, and that's, so people like our age more, you don't ever see anybody working at a company for like 10 years as much anymore. Um,
Yeah.
and so just like making sure you think about it, yearly. So I try and think about it whenever I have my like RD anniversary. Um,
Mhm.
basically it's just like, okay, I need to freshen stuff up, make sure I'm like still compliant on my CDR stuff, getting all my continuing education in. Um, those are all good things to do. So it's really like think about it, get some mentors to help you, and send it to everyone you can, every single person you can. Just like, hey, do you mind taking a look at my email? Not only does it make you look good because you're like, look at all this cool stuff I've done, but also they're helping you in developing what to say.
Mhm.
So that's
So,
probably helpful too.
would you say that you plan like a year in advance for what you want to do for your like next steps, or how far in advance, or does it vary?
Totally varies. Like my last position, I was just done with it and I was like, I'm just gonna put in my notice and see what happens. And I had no plans for the
Oh
future.
my.
And I called one of my mentors and she was like, hey, we have a position open. And it ended up working out. Yeah. I mean, for real, I
Oh,
was like,
wow.
I'm really unhappy. I think I want to move to
Yeah.
a different state. I think I'm just gonna leave and be a florist until I could find something or work in a hospital until I could find something, I
Mm,
mean, as a dietitian, you are very like liquid in what you can do. As long as you
that's
can sell it,
awesome.
that you can have that capability, which is also really
Yeah.
cool about the profession. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. You mentioned you lived in different states. So how many states have you lived in?
Hmm.
Or,
So I did my undergrad in Colorado. I grew up in Chicago, went to grad school in Chicago. I did a summer practicum in Ithaca, New York, for a few months, on sustainable agriculture, actually, which I should go back to those notes because it would probably help me in what I'm doing right now if I could ever find them. But um, and then I lived in St. Louis. And before I went to work in St. Louis, I had never been in the state of Missouri before. I literally
mhm.
just went and moved there for a job. Had never visited. I just like literally up and moved there. I like moving places. I'm not scared of it, especially because right now I don't like have a husband or kids or anything. So I kind of am like, I would love to, you know, live abroad or, do something like that while I can, I guess.
Mhm.
And I think dietetics also really gives you the opportunity to do that. Um, I mean, there's so many like global stuff, which is so cool.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
And
ask. How do you get opportunities international, like globally,
yeah, so
outside of the
there's a
country?
there's a international dietetics conference every other year. This year in 2020 in September, it was supposed to be in South Africa, I think, which I was very excited to go to. I like convinced my business that there was a business case for me to go, even though it was like crazy
Mm.
expensive. And then I was trying to convince my mom to go because then we could have like dietetic international South Africa trip together. And then COVID happened. Wonderful.
That's
But so that's one way. And then connecting with the academy too is another way. They have a lot of international connections and opportunities that you can reach out to. So like networking within the academy is huge too. Um, there are a lot of like international just nutrition organizations. You know, we're so grateful here to be in an abundance of food. And I say that with like a caveat, like overnutrition or what is it? Like overfed and undernourished basically in the United States, but we're not, you know, poverty stricken. There are a lot of organizations that are doing really cool stuff that need tons of dietitians internationally. It's just really connecting within that network and, you know, just being full force, go for it. If I would have stayed at that New Zealand company a little bit longer, I might have thought about transferring to somewhere in New Zealand, which would have been rad. But I really did not like the job, so
oh.
um, and I'm not good at hiding anything ever. I'm like a book, so you just read it all over my face. So that ended up not
Fair
working out,
enough.
but that's okay.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's all my written down questions. Do you have any other things you wanted to add to,
No,
you know?
I mean, if anybody wants to reach out to me and ask me any questions, love doing that. The follow-up part I'm not super good at because my job is awesome, but very time intensive. But I always am happy to help anybody talk with them for a half hour. Ooh, one other pro tip that I have, um, especially when, you know, trying to get internships, I think, is doing what I call informational interviews. And this is just like people love to talk about themselves, i.e., me. And so, really, if you just ask someone like, hey, would really like to know about you, can I grab like half hour of your time to talk about stuff? Get a list of questions ready together just to ask, just like basically doing a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And just like get to know them a little bit. And then when you're asking the questions, sneak a little bit in about yourself, just like you did, which is like, you know, uh, I always used to do the like, I'm a dietitian and I'm a MBA. Where do you see the like value in that? So it's a little bit like plug myself and also like where like do you see that being helpful? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I would do that again with like anybody that I thought was interesting to meet, any like people on Instagram I followed, or you know, people I would just randomly look stuff up on LinkedIn like business dietitian, sustainable dietitian, like all, you know, just like stuff that I really liked and see what
Mm-hmm.
would pop up. And then I just reach out to them. That's it. And most of the time people are like, yeah, I could spare a half hour, who cares? And it's helping somebody else. And I get to talk about myself. So it's a win-win-win. But that's all I got.
So,
All right.
okay, no, that's awesome. But you mentioned that people can reach out to you and ask questions. Where do you want them to contact you?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn? That's the
Hmm.
best way? Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
And another thing is if people don't like respond back in
Mm-hmm.
even like a week, don't take insult to that because like people just have a lot going on. And especially if they're not like on the job hunt, a lot of times they don't look at LinkedIn that often.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just like I probably look at my Facebook page like once every 6 months, maybe, to see like a cousin's kid or something.
Yeah.
But just like that, like people send me Facebook messages all the time and I look at it like twice a year and I'm like, oh, that's a cool article that you sent me back in February. Like, so like never take insult to that. Just like people have lives that are going on, you know, like if you want to like follow up, like, hey, is there an email address I could grab? You know, like a week after you send a message, you could say like, hey, is there an email address I could grab if that'd be easier? That's always like a good one. And don't take it personally.
Okay.
But once you find those people, hold on to them that you like, because they can change your life. Like, I know Carl had some mentor who would probably change his life. And it's super helpful. So yeah.
And funny enough, Carl was my mentor like a month ago or something. So that's
There
how I
you go.
got this gig too. So already changing my life.
There you go. Exactly. And you never know. I mean, even if it's just, and when I say mentor, it doesn't have to be on the official capacity, just like somebody you look up to that like cares about where you're going in the future and that you respect their input. I'd say
Mhm.
like it doesn't have to be always like somebody like, hey, hey, will you be my mentor? Like you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. It can just be like, you know, hey, can I sit down with you? And you do it like once a month for like 3 months, boom. That person is your mentor. You can call them your
Mhm.
mentor. It doesn't matter if it was in an official capacity, but it doesn't help when it is in an official capacity because they will always remember that. So,
Uh-huh. Awesome. Thank you so much. This was all very helpful. Do you want to say your name again so people know? I don't
yeah,
want to
sure.
butcher it.
No, it's okay. Carl already
Joanne.
did. So it's Joanne Rigali. So I'm Joanne Rigali. I'm an MBA and an RD. Proud to be. And I work at US Farmers and Ranchers in Action.
Okay, thank you so much.